Now, I want to be very clear at the outset that this is not a presentation about what's happening in Canada or that case. That's just the context of what brought me here, but not the content of my presentation. So the reason why I'm here is to discuss how this merger would dramatically increase the latent but serious problems arising from CP Railway's cross-border police command of its police force. That's the CP Police Service here in the United States. And to just provide some general context of why does this matter make such a difference over here, I'm just going to give you a few points of context around how the CP Police Service is structured. So as you may be aware, there's only one CP Police Service. CP operates in a multiple number of incarnations and subsidiaries on both sides of the Canada-US border. But in terms of the CP Police Service itself, it's got a united command that is based in the Chief of Police in Canada, who's in charge overall of the entire police force. And then there's a chief here for operations in the United States and a chief for operations in Canada. The chief in Canada is a police officer who is empowered under the Railway Safety Act, Section 44. And based on information that we have gathered, the chief is not a commissioned police officer anywhere in the United States, but certainly not in one state. We're able to get more data, and that's in the state of Illinois. In terms of the reporting hierarchy, the chief reports to the chief legal officer, who is, he's a corporate civilian and is based in Canada. Now, the chief's duty, if he has to execute his duties properly, it requires that he has access to information so he can instruct his subordinates here in the United States, obtain information that is relevant to his power as someone who's commanding police officers in the country, and so on and so forth. So when you take all of that together, there's a number of systemic issues that arise from this. The first one is the question of potential civil rights issues. Is it in the American interest to have persons who are not commissioned police officers anywhere in the United States, who legally speaking in this country are civilians because they are not sworn police officers, exercising that cross-border control over police officers in the country? So for example, if someone is arrested by a police officer, and this is not about did they do it or did they not, but is subjecting a citizen to the law enforcement powers of an entity that is ultimately controlled from outside American soil by corporate civilians consistent with the civil rights of Americans. So because I want to express that I'm not a lawyer over here, I'm just flagging these issues, and those who aren't educated about it can reach better conclusions. The other question is obviously one of sovereignty. Can you have foreign persons who are not based in the country, who potentially might not be citizens, I'm not sure if they are, exercising that cross-border command? You've got the digital tunnel information that has to go through when the chief asks about a file or is providing instructions. So who on the corporate side is getting access to this information? Is there a system to vet who has got the proper security clearances, as the US government might do if it was people who are based in the country? And then there's also the question of the extraterritorial application of Canadian law in the United States. So because the chief's powers as police officers arise solely under the Railway Safety Act, that raises the question of when they're commanding police powers in the United States pursuant to a Canadian statute, is that a potential violation of American laws, unless there's a bilateral agreement between the countries, for example, allowing something like that to be happening. There's also obviously customs and immigration consequences too, because when the trains are going across an international border, all of those police powers are vested in corporate civilians who are based in Calgary, but they're are watching trains. To do their job properly, they have to watch trains, they have to watch cargo and all the things that come along with having to cross an international border. And with this merger, this is a merger of not only regional consequence, but also of international consequence as well. I see that my time is running down, but I just wanted to emphasize, that when it comes to this issue, it's not only about the systemic part, but also about how deaths and serious injuries are investigated. And I know the submissions that this board is currently looking at, CP applied to strike those. I believe a decision on that is pending, but those submissions provide further details about all these implications that we've discussed. So I think what I'll just close by saying, something was echoed by a number of times by members of this panel about how you want to find the narrowest and most proportionate way to address a problem. And I want to just make it clear that we understand that the FRA in 2017 put out a regulation that allows railway companies to contract out their police services. That means that they don't necessarily have to hire them themselves. There's a way that they can be independent, based in the United States, that allows CP to protect its property, to protect its workers, to protect its customers' merchandise, but without having to control their police force from outside American territory. So in closing, I'll just say that this is a potential can of worms. It seems like it's been an underground fire that has been burning for a while. And with any can of worms, it always is best for to deal with them under conditions that you control and can dictate. Because if there's an incident down the road on any of these axes, national security, privacy, and so on and so forth, that can puncture this can, then it'll be harder to control all the problems that crawl out of it. So this merger, because it's looking at how are we extending these policing powers, because once they acquire KCS, the police force is now going to fall under the jurisdiction of the combined company with its headquarters in the United States. So what this board is looking at is pretty much an unprecedented expansion of a police force to an entire USMCA region. And this is the best time to be looking at, if this merger does go through, how do we address this potential impacts of the policing side on all of the interests that I just mentioned.
Thank you very much. You mentioned the FRA. I'm not clear, as I hear your concerns, whether those issues are properly something that we can even deal with as distinguished from the FRA, but we appreciate your being here and bringing the issue to our attention.
Just to clarify, I only raised the FRA is to just give the board the idea that you shouldn't be too concerned about the repercussions of taking any actions that restrict policing activity, because there's alternatives. So I was not invoking the FRA's jurisdiction.
But even in terms of whether we have jurisdiction to deal with these issues in the context of this merger, it's an open, I don't know the answer to the question, but it does occur to me it may be something within the FRA's purview, not ours, but we hear what you say and we will look into it. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And I appreciate your patience for waiting us out.
Thank you.
With that, it is 7 o'clock and the court reporter is going to turn into a pumpkin in about 30 seconds. So